kick us off, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Duke, General Counsel at the Surety and Fidelity Association of America. Rob?
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon, everybody, or morning for those out west. Among the many hats I wear at the Surety and Fidelity Association, I also staff SFAA's E-Business Advisory Committee. And one of the interests of SFAA and the committee is to ease the way of doing business through technology. And I put data standards in that category. Data standards allow data to be in a computer-readable form so they can be transmitted from one computer system to the other. So when data is transmitted, the receiving system can automatically download the data and know, as far as computers can know, what the data signifies. The Surety and Fidelity Association has actually been involved in data standards for several years, going back actually to an initial meeting at Liberty's offices in Seattle in the mid-1990s to discuss the Accord data standards for reporting surety transactions. So now moving to the present, we were pleased when XBRL US invited SFAA to participate in an advisory capacity on a working group to develop a prototype work in process taxonomy within the data standard for financial statements, which as a whole is the XBRL standard. That working group included sponsoring sureties, all of whom are SFAA members. It also included accounting firms and their associations, bond agents and producers. So the taxonomy will be used to tag data with a label in the work in process report. And that'll allow a contractor to transmit its WIP report directly to you, and the data will be uploaded into your underwriting system without the need really for manual entry. So think of all the time saved. Now, before handing this over to our panel of experts, I want to briefly state what the XBRL standard, and in particular this WIP taxonomy, is not. It is not a system. It is not a repository for your contractor's data. It's not an intermediary. It's simply a data standard to facilitate the electronic transmission of data between the contractor and you. So this webinar will introduce you to the XBRL standard in general and the work in process taxonomy in particular. So now I hand it back over to Michelle of XBRL US.
Rob, thanks very much. And I don't think I could have said it better. I think you explained the entire project in just a few short minutes, so I appreciate that. But we're going to go on and cover a little bit more in depth. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about XBRL US and who we are, who is this group that's involved in this process. We are a nonprofit consortium. We are the National Consortium for the Business Reporting Standard Extensible Business Reporting Language. Our organization developed data standards that are used today for US GAAP reporting by public companies as they report to the SEC. We've also developed taxonomies for other types of SEC reporting by credit rating agencies as well as mutual funds. And we've also developed an industry-led taxonomy for corporate actions reporting. We're a member-driven organization, and our members are organizations such as accounting firms, software and technology companies, data providers, filing agents, other nonprofits. In fact, the AICPA is a member of XBRL US. We are the US jurisdiction of a global organization called XBRL International, whereas XBRL International is responsible for maintaining the technical specification of XBRL. Our job is developing standards that are used in the US marketplace. So just a couple logistical points I'd like to make. I want to thank everybody for coming today and listening in. We are, all of the panelists will be able to speak, but all of the attendees are muted, but you can submit questions to us. There's a Q&A link at the top of the screen, and you can key in a question there, and we'll take it throughout the presentation. So hang on one sec here as I move to the next screen. Okay. I just want to introduce our speakers, and we have a really good lineup of participants today. We have Jason Dahl, who's Director of International Online Operations and Strategy at Liberty Mutual. You just heard Rob Duke, General Counsel at SFAA. We'll also hear at the end of the program from Eli Gilbert, who's Director of Underwriting at SFAA. We're going to see a demo from Eric Kish, who's Senior Vice President of Business Development at a company called 28M SEC, so we'll be introducing you to that tool. We'll hear from Campbell Pride, who's President and CEO of XBRL US. And then I'm Michelle Savage, VP of Communication at XBRL US. So first to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering today, we're going to be talking about the business case for standards in financial processing for underwriting. We'll give you some background on the XBRL standard. We'll talk about who benefits from data standards and how this is going to affect sureties. And then we'll be providing some demonstrations. We'll be demonstrating the US GAAP Taxonomy and the work in process taxonomy that Rob mentioned and show how those two fit together. And we'll also be demonstrating how you can actually consume an XBRL formatted work in process report. So how this would work in practice. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who's going to talk us through the business case.
Thank you, Michelle. As all of us are very aware, the current process for creation and reception of a WIP report or financial reports by the surety starts with the contractor. The contractor will either themselves or through a CPA firm create a WIP report in Excel or directly from their financial system. They'll send that report, which generally will come in different formats and come as different types of files, but they'll send that to either the bonding agency, who will in turn deliver it to the surety, or they'll deliver it directly to the surety. Here at Liberty Mutual, we see these reports come in as attachments to emails. We see them come in as faxes. We see them come in just the regular postal service. But they'll generally come in either as a PDF or an Excel format. Once we receive them at the surety, then we'll hand them over to our admins or underwriting assistants, who will basically take those reports and enter them into our underwriting system. And they'll do that either based on what they see from the reports organically, or they may have to make some interpretations on the report based on how the report is formatted. If we could go to the next slide. As Rob had indicated, this process is highly problematic. It's very manual. It's manual on everybody's end. It's very time consuming as the reports run from location to location and from person to person. It's very labor intensive as we have our admins and underwriters recreate or re-enter the data into our systems. It's error prone, both from trying to interpret the data that's coming off of the report and also just incorrect keying of the data into our systems. And therefore, as you add all of these up, it becomes very costly. We could go to the next slide. Thanks. So as we look at this problem, the use of data standards for financial information throughout the entire process really makes sense. And there are many different standards to look at. As we go through the rest of this presentation, you'll see why we've centered on XBRL as kind of the perfect solution. But under a process that would use data standards, the contractor or CPA firm would create the WIP or the financial statement just as they do today from Excel or from their financial system. And they can create it both in the traditional format that they've done it, so PDF or Excel, but they can do it with that layer of XBRL formatting and the XBRL taxonomy, which further downstream really automates and aids the process. They would be able to transmit those files either electronically or through email, and the surety would have the opportunity then to upload the data using the XBRL format into their systems and not have to have admins or UAs or other personnel rekey that information into their system. The key benefit here is that the underwriters can do their risk analysis and their financial analysis with confidence that they're receiving good data that's not error prone, that the definitions of the different fields in the reports are what they expect them to be, and we see a lot of benefit in the optimization of that process, but also the accuracy as we go about our underwriting tasks.
Jason, thanks very much. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the XBRL standard and why we felt that this was an appropriate standard to use for this specific application. The diagram that you see here gives a sense for the global nature of the standard. It's the standard for reporting by public companies, by private companies, by regulators, by government agencies. Public companies report data in XBRL format in China, Iran, Israel, Japan, South Korea, the United States. Banks report in XBRL format in Chile, in Panama, in Peru, in the US also. And private companies even report in XBRL today in Belgium, Denmark, Italy, Germany, South Korea, Spain, and the UK. So it's very much used throughout the world. And as a result, there are lots of different software tools available to facilitate that process. Earlier on, Rob talked a little bit about what XBRL is not, and I think that bears emphasizing again. XBRL is not a software product. We're not here to pitch a product to you. It's really a standard, and it's not a database. We're not also talking about collecting any information from private companies. What happens to the data is really up to the process that's in place today. So it's really just a way of formatting existing data so that the data becomes more consumable. It doesn't change what data is reported. It doesn't change the business process itself, only how the data is formatted. Extensible business reporting language is an XML-based markup language. It's also available in JSON. And as I said, it's a global standard for tagging data. So what you see in red here is an example of how this tagging works. The reported value of 1,250,000 by itself is meaningless. But to a computer, they understand what that value means when you put defining the information around it, like estimated cost that you see here on the angle brackets. So that tagging allows the computer to know what's being reported and what's being conveyed. So what XBRL does is it makes financial data, including the work in process report, computer readable. So it takes data that previously had been in Excel or PDF and makes it understandable to a computer. The facts that are reported are clearly defined to the contractors, to the CPA firms, to the sureties, maybe ultimately to the banks that receive this information. And the work in process taxonomy that we're going to show you a little bit later has been developed by a collaborative group of sureties, of contractors, of different organizations, because we work together to agree upon the terms that we're going to use, how they're defined, and ultimately how they're used. So these are terms like percent complete, earned contract revenue, cost to complete, terms that you're all familiar with. So what this means is that data in XBRL format is available to the surety on a more timely basis, eliminates processing required, eliminates the rekeying, and that ultimately results in benefits to the contractors as well, in that it increases their access to credit. So how does XBRL do this? The standard takes the simple XML tagging function that I showed earlier and adds additional structure into it. And that additional structure is used to better define financial data. This is really critical, because it means that all the data that's reported in XBRL has a consistent means of reporting elements like, or characteristics of financial data like reporting periods, moments in time, periods in time, decimals, entity being reported, units of measure, the concept being reported. This means that for the end user, which would be the surety's financial system, it can easily recognize all the values that are reported in a work in process statement that comes in an XBRL format. So that enables straight through processing, and it cuts out the need to rekey the data. Let's just take a look at how an individual fact value reported in a work in process statement would be defined. So what you see here is I've just blown up this WIP report a little bit to make it a little bit easier to see. And a human looking at this obviously can read the columns and read the rows of this table, and they can understand what the value 12,113,470 is defined as. Okay, it's defined as earned contract revenue, it's for contract number 200, and it's for the period from inception to December 31st, 2014. A computer obviously can't read that data, which is why we need humans today to rekey information in. So this is where the XBRL data standard comes into play. This image provides a diagram on how the value would be defined in an XBRL document. The taxonomy, which is represented by the green box that you see on the bottom labeled concept, is that digital collection of terms that defines a specific reporting need. So it defines all of the elements like contract percent complete, estimated revenues and costs, and it can define those ultimately for individual jobs and contracts. The instance document is the XBRL document that's created for a specific reporting situation. So for this example, it's defining contractor ABC, earned contract revenue for ABC contractor for the specific contract number 200. It's in US dollars, it's reported in millions, and it's for the time period from inception to December 31st, 2014. So taking those two things together, the taxonomy and the instance document, helps us define a very specific reporting situation that a computer can understand and read. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jason again, who's going to talk us through the WIP pilot.
Yeah, so this whole process started a little over a year ago here in Bellevue, Washington, at a conference where a lot of industry folks got together and talked about what we could do to bring automation to financial statements and the WIPs that the sureties are consuming. And as you can see, we've had a ton of participation. We've got sponsoring organizations, we have participating organizations. The interest level and the number of people that have been involved in the creation of the taxonomy and the preparation of the WIP pilot has been tremendous and very consistent over time. The sponsoring organizations from the surety side of the business, AIG, Liberty Mutual, Travelers, and Zurich have been very strong leaders in what we've done. Accounting firms like Galena and Markham, and the NASBP has also been very active in sponsorship of the overall taxonomy and the WIP pilot. Some of the other sponsoring organizations, software companies like 28MSEC, who we'll hear from in a few moments, Altova, DataTrax, and the Oracle Corporation have been very involved, as well as other participants that have lent advice and input and guidance throughout the entire process. So the SFAA, Construction Financial Management Association of America, the Financial Association Standards Board, the Construction Industry CPAs Consultants Association. It's been a great collaboration amongst each of the individual groups, really to come to an end of having a very simplified form of automation that all of us can implement and bring clarity to the work that we do. If we can go to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So where do we stand? As I said, we've been working on this for over a year, putting things together. We're finally at a state where we have a pilot that has been launched and we can look at. The work in progress taxonomy has been developed and is open for review. It leverages elements from the US GAAP Taxonomy, which you'll see in a moment, and is available as a proposed recommendation. And really what that means is this group of advisory people, the sponsors and the people who have contributed their advice, have come up, worked with XBRL US, and have come up with this taxonomy. We believe that this is the right taxonomy, but it is open for consideration and comments. So we encourage everybody to take a look at it and ask questions and provide comments, and we think that that's important. Some of the materials that will be helpful for you, in addition to just the raw taxonomy, is that there is a preparer's guide, there is a business case paper that's available, and there are sample XBRL instance documents so that you can really kind of take it makes the taxonomy come alive from the paper, and you can really see what the application is, how you can use it. You can socialize it around with your technology departments, and they can review and consider how it would be implemented in your particular organization.
Great, Jason, thanks very much. And I want to remind everybody that if you have questions, you can click on the Q&A link and submit those questions, and then we'll probably take those at the end. But now for the next part of the presentation, we're going to go on to give a demonstration of the US GAAP taxonomy and then the work in process taxonomy and how they fit together. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Campbell Pride, who developed actually both the US GAAP taxonomy and the work in process taxonomy. So Campbell?
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, I'm just sharing my screen here. So the first thing I'm going to do to show you today is just the US GAAP taxonomy for those who haven't seen it before, and then we'll just have a look at the work in process taxonomy. So the first thing I have here is, I've just got my screen, is the US GAAP taxonomy. And just I'll show you where you can find that if you're interested, or you can have a look at if you wanted to have a look at it. So the FASB has a place for XBRL on their website. The FASB is the accounting standard setter in the United States. And one of the things that they've been doing over the last 5 years is trying to promote the use of their standards in an electronic format, so that a lot of this data, rather than being reported in paper, can be reported electronically. And you can see here on their website, there's this word taxonomy, so you can go and look at it here. And what I'm bringing up here is the US GAAP taxonomy. I just, you can click on the link and bring it up, but I've already loaded it. And just what is a taxonomy? Basically, what it is really just a listing, or you can think of it as an index of all the accounting concepts that have been defined. And that's used so anyone can go and look at it, and they can say, okay, let's just agree on what we're actually reporting. So it's just a way to be able to, what's the standard name I can give something, so when I call an apple, everyone understands an apple and not an orange. So, and the taxonomy includes a few things. If you look at it, they're basically structured in a way which kind of aligns with the way that the accounting standards are set together, but it's kind of it kind of follows the way that a financial statement would look, with like a balance sheet and income statement, cash flows, shareholders' equity, comprehensive income, and then like disclosure notes about different parts of tax that you'd see in a financial report. Balance sheet, payables, restructuring, whatever it may be. One of the things that was not in this list was the work in process report. Obviously, if the FASB had included this, then we wouldn't need the taxonomy, but that was not included, typically because it's not a disclosure that would be reported to the SEC. So what we've done is we've gone and effectively added the work in process, or the work in progress type of information you typically see at the end of a contractor's report, reporting all that information. So in a taxonomy, you pretty much have a structure of the type of information you'd expect, and it describes what something is. So here's a costs in excess of billing, something that you typically see in a contractor's financial statement. And it has information about where it is in the FASB's accounting standards. You can click on these links, and you can go back and you can see here's some information about completed contract method, and about billings, contracts in excess of related billings, etc. So the whole thing kind of ties together, and it's just a way to basically record information that should traditionally be in paper, but in an electronic format, which you can browse around through in a browser. Now, the taxonomy in itself it's just really a description of what everything is, but that taxonomy can be used when you create a report and you report numbers. You can basically associate the concepts that are reported and that are defined in the taxonomy in your report. So one of the things they have in here, you can see here's a name. Every one of these has like a code effectively, or they call it an element name, which you can put on a document. So this is the US GAAP taxonomy here. And so what I've also done is I'll show you the work in process taxonomy. So I just have that in a different tool because it's not on the FASB website yet. Hopefully it will be. And this is the portion of the taxonomy which we've created this work in process taxonomy, which basically is integrated into the US GAAP taxonomy. And it's the same thing. We've basically tried to standardize these terms across, so that we can standardize them across industries. When any of this information is reported, we want people to use this taxonomy as the basis. So whenever they defined information about a contract, they should use the tags used in this taxonomy, or the elements used in this taxonomy. So you can see there's things we've added, like contract revenue, estimated revenue, and when we've added these to the taxonomy, I'll show you what they are. We've put a definition and documentation about it. We've also put references in and referenced it back to the FASB's documentation on this. So really, it's just it's an add-on to what the FASB's already defined, which then can be used. So that's kind of the taxonomy itself, and this is available. This is available now. We've got it up on our website at the moment, so you can go to XBRL US. I'll just show you how to get there. So we have it on our website here, xbrl.us. And then there's a section on here for our industries, and we've put it under surety for the meantime. And here's the work in process taxonomy. There's a bit of information about it and some of the resources that we talked about earlier and where you can get them. And so then we've got the taxonomies here, and you can click on these, and you can look at them, or you can open them in a tool. We've also put some example instances up on here as well. This example instance 1. All this is an example. This is here. It's just basically a standard report, but we've also put up what that looks like in XBRL, and I'll just really briefly show you what it looks like. It's kind of ugly, but it's just, this is what a computer's going to generate. This is what it looks like. But all these numbers that you'll see in that report are basically reported in a syntax that a computer will understand. And then this can be opened in various tools that people may want to use. So I just opened up an open source tool, and I open that instance, and here you can see the same information in a tool. It's not particularly pretty, this one, but you could open them into Excel. There's lots of different software that different vendors open. And so maybe that's a good chance to hand it over to the next speaker, and then you can talk about what you can do with this information and what it looks like. So
Campbell,
Michelle,
thanks very much.
I'll just stop sharing my screen so you guys can.
Yeah, you can stop sharing, and I'll take over again here. Okay, just bear with me for a sec. Okay, great. So now you have a sense for what the taxonomy is, and this is the taxonomy that the group that Jason was explaining, that working group came together to develop that taxonomy. So all of those people, AIG Travelers, Liberty Mutual, obviously, NASBP, SFAA, we all came together to work on this taxonomy. And the initial draft is available, or the initial release is available, but it will continually need additional input, and that's also what we're looking for more input from all of you. But just moving on, we wanted to explain a little bit about how XBRL data is created and then eventually consumed. We're going to focus for this presentation on how it would be consumed by a surety into their own financial system. But just to give you a little bit of a explanation of what we're doing on the creation side, getting contractors to develop XBRL formatted working processes is a challenge, because we're really looking to get them to do something that's a little bit different in their process. However, we have been working with a number of software providers, within the XBRL community, and we're also starting to explore, getting into some of the software providers in the surety industry to get them to incorporate the work in process taxonomy and develop some kind of an XBRL module in their tools. And today we have a couple of applications that are working and that are available to use. A company called Altova has created an Excel add-in, and essentially it allows a contractor, or potentially their CPA firm, or anybody, to really take their Excel version of the work in process report and then cut and paste the financials into another spreadsheet where they can click a button and automatically generate an XBRL file. So that is really taking a process where a CPA firm or a contractor develops their working process in Excel. They'll be able to use this add-in to automatically generate the XBRL document that then could be sent on to the sureties. Separately, we're working with Oracle, who Oracle happens to be a member of XBRL US and has been in the XBRL space for many years. their financial system has a disclosure management tool that has also been enabled to work with XBRL. So for any, some of the larger contractors that may have an Oracle system for their financials, they can actually enable this application to generate the XBRL formatted report. So those are just, we're still in early stages on this. We're working hard to engage some of the existing providers to the contractor community and get them to incorporate XBRL modules, but we think we're well on our way, and we have some applications that work today, so that's all really good news. On the consumption side, similarly, we're working with a couple of providers, and we're lucky enough to have with us today Eric Kish from 28M SEC. He's going to provide us a demonstration of how their tool could consume the XBRL formatted work in process reports. But there's another tool out there that takes a slightly different tack in this process called, and it's also from Altova. And they have a tool that allows you to map from that taxonomy, that digital collection of terms, into your own financial system, and then begin to automatically start bringing in those XBRL formatted work in process reports. So you would, with the Altova tool, you would do a one-time mapping and then be able to extract the data automatically every time a new work in process comes in. So it's a one-time process. But so, that's one application that's out there. And now we're going to show you the 28M SEC tool and how that works to, to facilitate that process. So Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can then begin sharing yours. Okay, Eric, do you want to take it away?
I'm sorry, Michelle. I was talking to myself.
Okay.
Do you see my screen? Is everybody seeing my screen?
No.
Okay, so I need to.
Yeah, I just stopped sharing, so you should see the share screen, the little green box.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Great. Looks
Okay.
good.
Looks good?
Yep.
All right, so about consumption of XBRL. XBRL itself, it's a pretty complex format, and a lot of the advantages of it come from this complexity. But then implementation shouldn't be complex, and that's where 28M SEC comes to help. And the idea is to put between a surety existing system and the XBRL filing some kind of a black box that will just store and allow the surety system to access on demand all the concepts that are described by the taxonomy. So the idea is have a quick implementation process with very low maintenance going forward. Very important when taxonomy changes or evolves, you shouldn't need to reconfigure or remap or whatever. Also, everything that is filed should be stored and made available to query behind the surety firewall, and then allow the surety system to use modern integration technologies like REST APIs to just query facts on demand using taxonomy concepts. And as an added bonus, if you want to look into filings or across filings, you should be able to connect other popular tools like Excel spreadsheets or BI tools. So when I'm saying black box, we call our technology a cell store, and you are feeding it with the US GAAP and work in process taxonomy, and then you're just receiving filings from your clients. And then immediately after, you should be able to allow your surety underwriting system to call by name and retrieve the information for further processing. So it should be as simple as that. Now, what is behind this black box? Well, first and foremost, when we take a filing, we first parse it and validate it. And then we store it into a large repository and make it available to you anytime you want on demand. And then your surety system, using an API, can query in real time any information that was passed over using an XBRL file. And as I also said, if you want to use as a bonus some other tools to look into the filings, you should have available connectors to connect to Excel spreadsheets or to various other business intelligence tools to make the whole picture available to you, even historically. So let me jump into the demo. For the purposes of this demonstration, because I did not have actual filings from sureties, I'm going to use the publicly available US GAAP Taxonomy filings from the SEC. And I'm going to use a Google spreadsheet in this particular case that is calling the API to retrieve information in real time. So just to give you an example, if I'm looking at the cell, you will see a function called getFact with some parameters. And these parameters are actually telling the query what information do I need and from which period, what concept, etc. And this function will probably use the ticker of the company, so the name of the company, to identify uniquely the company that we're looking at, and then the fiscal year that I'm looking at, and then eventually the concept that I want to retrieve. So I took an example of 5 concepts here, and I'm going to show you how fast this happens. So if I change here, for example, to Oracle, in a couple of seconds, I'm going to have this information. I'm going to also have information about the company, about the sector that it's part of, and also, for example, if I want to change the year, let me change this to 2015. You'll see that immediately I'm going to receive the same information, but for a different dimension, which is the year 2015 instead of the year 2011. I also added here a couple of ratios, which are not necessarily part of the taxonomy, but you can extend your taxonomy, your internal taxonomy, to pre-calculate things if you want them ready to go for the surety system to ingest. This is very simple. You can make these calls from any system you have. It's system agnostic. The REST API is a universal standard with very high adoption these days among IT folks. And essentially, you're passing a call with parameters, and the system, the black box, should retrieve it for you, and you shouldn't bother about the complexities of how this was stored, of how this was parsed. You just want the information in real time. I'm going to show you another example where I can use 2 companies to compare. Let me put here 2 tickers. I used Oracle before, and I'm going to use IBM. And here, using the same functionality, you'll see that I can compare across a period. Here it's 2013, maybe let's move it to 2014. And as you see in a couple of seconds, I was able to retrieve via the API the same 5 concepts plus some calculated ratios for this information. Now, of course, the US GAAP taxonomy and the work in process taxonomy, it's much more complex. But our aim is to simplify the retrieval of this information on demand without any intervention really from the IT department. There is no mapping involved. There is only a call. If you know the name of the concept and the other dimensions that you want to retrieve, that's all you need to call that fact and use it in your surety system. That's about it from me. So back to you, Michelle. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great, Eric, thanks very much. Okay, I'm going to go back and share my screen again. Okay. So that gives you a sense for how the data can be brought into the system. And as Eric was explaining, he showed an application looking at public company data, but this, is the same process for private company data that you'd be bringing in from contractors. And I want to open it up for questions before we go on to kind of our next steps here. But so if people have questions, they want to, they can input them by clicking on the Q&A link above. And I had one question that we received, which related to, is there a requirement? And, is this something that we would, is the working group, intending to make this a requirement for contractors to adopt the new XBRL standard? And Jason, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll respond to it. The working group's definitely not trying to create something where we're putting burdensome requirements on contractors or other sureties. We see this from the surety perspective, and the CPAs see this as well, and the agents see this as a means to introduce automation and really ease the workflow and ease the friction of the current workflow that we currently have. So this is something that we believe can be implemented at an extremely low cost on the contractor side, on the surety side, and on the CPA firm side, and we feel that it's a win-win for everybody.
Great, thanks very much, Jason. Okay, I think we don't have any other questions. I'm going to go on to our next steps, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eli, who's going to give some closing remarks. And actually, I think we do have a question here. So thank you for the question. I'm not clear on how a contractor or a client would control who gets to see their data. Okay, that's a really good question. And Jason, can I ask you to respond to that one? So the question is, how would a contractor or client control who gets to see their data? And this, I think, goes back to, are we planning on databasing the content?
Yeah, we're definitely not planning on databasing the content, so please don't have any concerns there. Really, from a high-level workflow, it will work exactly the way it does today. So the contractor or the CPA will generate the WIP report and will forward it on to the surety that will then, in an automated way, consume that data into their system. So they're not pulling from a database or anything like that. They're using the file that's being provided to them from the CPA or the contractor. The advantage, though, is that this can be provided in an electronic format. So from a point-to-point electronic format, and that really decreases the variability in reports that we get on the surety end. As I mentioned, we get them as email attachment files, we get them as faxes, we get them as pieces of paper that are sent through the mail. So with that point-to-point electronic transmission, what that does is it really eases the way that data flows from the contractor to the surety. But again, it's not going into any kind of a master database or anything like that.
Yeah, and maybe, Michelle, just to add to that, contractors obviously in a lot of cases also send this data to not only the sureties, they could be sending it to multiple parties. For example, you may be sending this data to SBA, and in that case you take the same data and you put it into a PDF format. You may be taking that data and putting it into other people's systems for other purposes, for a bank loan or whatever it may be. And the whole point of the exercise is to standardize this. So one of the things we try to do is go and talk to all those groups to say, look, if you're requesting this data, request it in a standardized format. So in the long run, it's going to make it significantly easier for the contractor. I put it into one format, then I can send it to anyone. I can send it to SBA, I can send it to surety, I can send it to the bank. They're not going to ask for me in a different format. They're not going to ask me to fill out a separate form. So the whole idea is to not only obviously make efficiencies for downstream workflow, but also to make it in the long run easier for contractors to file this information. Only prepare the information once, and then it's done.
Great, thanks Campbell and Jason. And I think it's also important to note that the software that does that takes the XBRL document and then transmits it into the surety system, all of that is at the surety. So like the 28 MSM SEC that you saw demonstrated, the other tools that we've been talking about, that all resides at the surety, so that it allows you to ingest that data. There's no intermediary involved in this at all. It's not designed to set up an intermediary. This is very different than the public company reporting process that we mentioned, that where public companies report to the SEC houses all their data and then makes it publicly available. This is quite different. This is just, as Jason said, point to point from contractor, directly to whoever they want to send it to. Maybe go to their CPA firm or the bonding agent, for their review initially, but then ultimately goes on to the surety, and it goes to whoever they want it to go to and no one else. Another question that we got in is, does the surety pay XBRL US a fee to use the standard? What are the implementation costs for the surety? Okay, that's a really, really good question. XBRL is an open standard. It is an open data standard. So any taxonomy that we developed or that XBRL International develops, like this work in process taxonomy, is freely, openly available. There are no licensing fees associated with it. The only cost that would be incurred for a surety is in figuring out how to bring the data in, and that is, probably there will be some kind of fees to a software provider like 28MS SEC that we showed you, or Altova, or some other tool to just ingest that data. So and that our feeling is that ultimately those costs are going to be significantly lower than the ongoing costs of keying the data in, vetting the data, and going through the process that you have today. So it is a free and open standard, and there's no licensing fees associated with it.
Michelle, if I could jump in, this is Jason from Liberty. For the sureties, as far as the cost of implementing kind of a data import, this is very low cost and has the potential to be very, very powerful for you. You can implement something as low cost and simple as an Excel plugin, which is very very simple to code and very simple to implement, all the way to a data import utility for your surety management system.
Great, thanks, Jason. Another question that we received is, how are confidentiality and information security concerns addressed? And I think that kind of speaks to some of the other, we've received a few questions on that point. I don't know, Campbell or Jason, if you want to try to address that one.
Yeah, so on that, the information security, it would be the same as it would be on any other file that you'd be sending around. So you don't have to implement anything above and beyond what you already have already. If you're sending these files as an Excel file or sending it as an XBRL file, it really makes no difference. We don't have a security mechanism built into the XBRL standard, and that's deliberate because there are other security standards out there. There are other security mechanisms which different parties may want to adopt. So we're neutral. So the standard itself is neutral on that. So that really the way that information is communicated from a contractor to a surety or to a bonding agent is purely is at the discretion of the two parties who are agreeing to transfer the information.
Michelle, may I say something from a technology side?
Sure.
So a solution like 28MSEC provides security mechanisms, like once the data is transferred to the surety has the possibility, even inside, to restrict access or mask certain information based on a security model, like a user model, who can see which company or which information from which company, etc. That's from me.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. A comment that we received that's more of a comment than a question, but says, this individual says, I don't think it's fair to say that surety adoption here is low cost. I think any cost depends on the complexities of any system doing the adoption. I don't know if, you know, Campbell or Jason, if you'd like to respond to that.
Yeah, no, I can answer that. One of the reasons that, you know, we push for standards in general is because it allows you to do things. If you standardize anything, you can get the cost down. One, because the cost of doing anything is shared over a much larger population, and it's much more efficient than building individual proprietary systems. You know, for a case of a lot of the stuff that 28 MSECs are doing or other service providers are doing is that same solution can be offered for anywhere around the world for any XBRL data, irrespective of where it is. So you don't get into a situation where a vendor is wholly reliant on a single industry to support it. So what they can do is those costs can be spread over many different contracts. So you don't get independence. So you get you get much more economies of scale. And then at the same time, we have you know, there's a lot of people writing their own software. It encourages people to enter the industry to write their own software. There's a much larger market, so it's a much more competitive market. So generally, if you compared it, and that's a statement, it's not free. There's always going to be some costs associated with it, but it sets it up in a way that it creates an environment which is much better for all parties. Consumers have more choice. And sellers have many more customers that they can sell to. XBRL is agnostic as to what the taxonomy is. You know, any tools that anyone is creating, if you built a tool to consume XBRL data, you could use it for surety, you could use it, the bank could use it for assessing loans. Anyone can use that same software across the board. So it's really a way of, once you get that standardization of reporting information, that gives you much more opportunity to manage costs and get efficiencies of scale across industries and across globally.
I think also contributing to those economies of scale is the fact that XBRL is an open standard, and none of the sureties, none of the vendors, none of the contractors or CPAs are having to pay to use the standard itself. Really, you know, lends to low cost development. So, you know, whatever solution a surety decides is right for them to consume the data, really all that they're paying for is development costs. There's not those extra layers of licensing and you know, in that extra cost there.
Right. So it's not an ongoing cost. It's like once you have
exactly.
a system in place to handle XBRL data, and you know, we're not saying that's going to be a zero cost, but over time the benefits are going to increase because you'll be able to continue, you know, bringing data in, and you won't have those ongoing costs of, you know, rekeying information. Another question we got, which I think is a good one, is it seems there may be a lot of work for the contractor to produce the file in XBRL format. If the standard is not required of the contractor, then what is the incentive for them to do this? I can fully understand the benefits to the surety, but not understand the full benefit to the contractor. Jason, not to throw every question at you, but I think that's a good one for you to
Yeah, so the reality is that the majority of our contractors are using CPA firms because XBRL is used many other places in the financial world. The CPA firms have XBRL integrated into their systems, and those pieces are already in place. And so, you know, it becomes a low-cost solution for the contractor because all of the pieces are in place there, and it's just a matter of getting them to recognize and adopt the use of the taxonomy in building their WIP reports. What it does from the surety perspective, though, is that it allows the surety and really all players along the workflow to be using the same data to understand the data that they are getting and know what those data field definitions are and how the data is formatted and all of that. So there's not a tremendous investment of time or money that's required of the contractor to use the taxonomy.
And this is Rob Duke. I would also add, as a benefit to the contractor, is that the ultimate result, it seems to be, is is a streamlined underwriting process, and taking away kind of that downtime of manually entering financial information. So if you can take that out of the underwriting process, you're streamlining it, and that, I would see or envision, that leads to faster turnaround times in getting responses back to the contractor.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Rob and Jason. I don't see any more questions coming in. I just want to cover off on, sort of our ongoing efforts and where we're going from here. So we're continuing our outreach efforts to sureties, to software companies, to contractors, and also to CPA firms. And I think somebody had mentioned CPA firms that they are getting much more engaged. Galena and Markham is a recent sign-on. We've had discussions with a number of other CPA firms that are very interested in this, and they see this as a real benefit to their clients. We're going to be working on developing some case studies. We're going to continue refining the taxonomy. And our ask to all of you is to get involved in some fashion. If you feel that this is something that's going to be helpful for your organization down the road, we'd love to get more sureties involved in the working group, and we really want to help demonstrate more momentum in this movement. One of the things that I keep hearing from the software providers is, well, the more sureties that get involved, the more CPA firms that get involved, that is more incentive for them to get involved. And that's what we really need, is to get some of the software members engaged or companies engaged. So if you're interested in getting involved, you've got my contact information up there on the screen. You can learn more about the initiative by going to xbrl.us/surety. And we would welcome anyone who wants to get involved and help us carry the message forward. And also, if you have specific questions, let me know, and we can schedule a call and talk to you privately and address any issues you may have or questions you may have about the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eli, who is going to give us some closing comments. Eli?
Thank you, Michelle. And thank everyone for joining the webinar today. I think everybody that presented the information did a wonderful job in explaining the project holistically and giving everybody a good sense of what we're trying to do. What I would like to reiterate is that XBRL US is not a warehouse of non-public financial information for the contractors. So the project itself is basically to create a data standard that will standardize the information that is being presented to the surety companies. What I will say is that if you have any questions that was not presented during the presentation today, please send them to the SFAA. We'll be updating our frequent asked questions for the WIP project and presenting those to the members. We will also post that on our website for your viewing as well. This webinar was recorded, so it will be posted on our website as well. So if you have anybody in your company that wasn't able to participate in the webinar today, please let them know that the webinar will be on our website and available to our members.
Great, thanks, Eli. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and we hope that you'll connect with us later and take a look at our website, and we're very excited about this project going forward. Thanks very much.